Hello, everyone. Welcome to the College Admissions Collaborative, highlighting engineering and technology virtual college fair. We thank you for joining us this evening. Just a few housekeeping announcements before we get started. You can use the Q&A button on your screen to type your questions to our presenters at any time throughout the next 45 minutes. Your camera and microphone are turned off, so the panelists cannot see or hear you. This was just one of multiple different sessions happening this evening, so please be sure to sign up for additional sessions happening after this. This presentation is being recorded and will be available within about a week at strivescan.com/CACHET. And now I'd like to turn it over to our presenters.
Well, wonderful. Well, thank you. And thanks for joining us. We're really excited that you're here with us this afternoon, this evening, this morning, wherever you may be as you join us today to hear about standing out as a STEM applicant. My name is Emily Almas. I'm Assistant Vice Provost and Director of Admissions at Washington University in St. Louis, and I'm joined by four fantastic colleagues who you'll hear from in just a moment. On that note, let's kick things off with a bit of an overview of what to expect in the next 45 minutes. We'll introduce you to each of our institutions and ourselves. We'll talk about the different kinds of STEM programs that are out there and how you can find one for you, what kind of courses you might want to be thinking about as you think about preparing for studying STEM in the future. We'll discuss, of course, how you might stand out in the application process, what you can do to learn more, and of course, take your questions. Now, on that note, I'm going to turn things over to my colleague from Boston University.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Emily Lake. I'm an Associate Director of Admissions at Boston University. Boston University is a large private teaching and research university located in the western section of the city of Boston along the Charles River. We are one of the largest private institutions in the country with over 16,000 undergraduate students studying across our 10 different undergraduate schools and colleges. So we're broken down by different academic focus, like many of my colleagues here tonight. Our STEM schools are the College of Arts and Sciences, the College of Engineering, and the College of Health and Rehabilitation Sciences, called the Sargent College. We are an urban institution. There is tremendous opportunity for experiential learning. There's tremendous academic flexibility, so you can take classes across disciplines and even combine programs across schools. So if you have multiple interests, including STEM or otherwise, you can combine programs and major and minor across different schools. Trying to keep things short, so I'm going to pass it off to my colleague at our next school.
Hi, everyone. My name is Naomi Varnas. I'm a senior admissions officer at Columbia University in the city of New York, and I use the pronouns she and her. I'm excited to be able to present with everyone else, but a little bit about Columbia. We are, our undergraduate schools are two. So we have our Fu Foundation School of Engineering and Applied Science, which is a real mouthful. I'll refer to it as Columbia Engineering, and Columbia College. In both of those, you can study STEM. In Columbia College, that's where you'll find our harder sciences, including the natural sciences. At the Fu Foundation School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, that's where you'll find our engineering majors, so 10 engineering departments and 22 engineering majors. Between those two schools, students share one residential campus right in Morningside Heights, so that's just northwest of Central Park, right in the island of Manhattan, and then have access to the over 17 graduate schools that are part of Columbia University more broadly. But I will pass it on to my next colleague.
So hello, everyone. My name is Brandon Mack. I'm an Associate Director of Admission and very proud alum of Rice University, located in the beautiful city of Houston, Texas. Rice is what I like to call a comprehensive research university with a liberal arts attitude. So what I mean by that is that you get the very best of both worlds, the very best of a major research university, combined with the very best elements of a small liberal arts college. We have about 3,900 undergraduate students. We offer 7 academic schools of study. When you apply as a student, you indicate the school that fits your interest the best, but you're not locked into that decision. When you become a student of the university, you're a student of the entire university. So you do have access to all 7 schools. We're right now the #1 best quality of life university, located once again in the beautiful city of Houston, Texas, home to Beyonce. And yes, Rice is in formation. And I'll pass it along to my colleague.
Good evening. My name is Dexter Jordan, Associate Director of Admissions at Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology. We're located in Terre Haute, Indiana. That's 70 miles west of Indianapolis, 3 hours from Chicago, Cincinnati, and St. Louis. We currently have a student enrollment of 2,200 undergraduate students. We are primarily an undergraduate educational school. We teach science, engineering, and math, 13-to-1 student faculty ratio, 20 students per class. We have the distinction of having all of our classes being taught by faculty to give our students the best opportunity for instruction. We like teaching both sides of whatever discipline that you decide to go into. So you learn all of the beautiful concepts, all those wonderful theories, and all those fantastic equations. And then we stick you in the lab and say, prove it. And so we want you to get the best of both worlds, learn from our faculty, and enjoy the student life at Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology. Thank you so very much for joining us, and I'll turn it over to our next colleague.
Well, wonderful and great. And just a reminder, my name is Emily. I work at Washington University in St. Louis. We are located, as our name suggests, in the vibrant, historic, and growing city of St. Louis, Missouri. We have more than 7,000 undergraduate students studying in 5 different colleges, including our McKelvey School of Engineering. I would say WashU students are known for being collaborative, interdisciplinary. More than 75% of our students do more than just major in one discipline or field. So there are many opportunities to combine interests in fields such as STEM with other disciplines as well. Community is something that's very important to us. All first-year students live together on a specific part of our campus, and student life is something that we elevate throughout a student's experience at WashU. But that's just a quick little taste of all that WashU has to offer. I'd like to turn things over now to my colleague from Boston University to tell you a little bit more about different kinds of STEM programs out there.
Thanks, Emily. So we wanted to kick things off by allowing you really to capture the sense of the diversity that are STEM programs, majors, minors, concentrations, and opportunities for hands-on learning experiences. This slide really scratches the surface. There's so much more, but we did want to give you kind of a good introduction to the types of majors that many of our schools offer. Of course, many of our institutions, actually all of us, offer laboratory sciences, also known as natural sciences. This includes everything from biology, physics, chemistry, to brain sciences, earth sciences, environmental science, the list goes on. Many institutions have emerging fields of technology and innovation programs. This can include innovation centers on our campuses, new venture accelerator programs. So for those of you that are really entrepreneurial or innovative in spirit, you might want to look out for programs specifically designed to help you launch maybe startups or create new products. Our institutions boast product innovation and maker spaces on our campus. You can really get your hands dirty. The picture you see here is actually taken of the students at our Tinker Lab, one of our spaces on campus for students to use to create new material. We also have innovation minors and majors. Of course, all of our schools mentioned engineering programs. There is tremendous diversity in engineering. We see biomedical engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical, computer, civil, environmental, the list goes on. We also have lots of institutions around the country offer health science majors. Now, this is slightly different than pre-medical advising pathways, which I'll talk about in just a moment. What I mean by health science majors are really majors designed to launch your career. They might lead you toward a specific discipline. They might lead you towards a specific postgraduate degree or even doctoral program. So this might include physical therapy majors, nursing majors, speech, language, and hearing sciences, nutrition, anatomy and physiology, even public health. So maybe more specific pre-professional programs that lead to a more niche area of the health sciences. Of course, our schools and colleges offer computer science and mathematics, although there are many emerging fields here too, like data science and cybersecurity programs. Our schools boast accelerated programs. This might include 7-year accelerated medical programs that combine undergraduate degree with a medical degree, or +1 master's program. So for those of you looking to accelerate your degree, both do your bachelor's degree and a master's degree, you can tack one on at many of our institutions. And then finally, to make sure that you're successful in whatever pathway you choose, STEM or not, we have advising programs. And there are specific advising programs to help you along the pathway for pre-health and pre-med specifically, as well as pre-law and other types of pre-professional advising. This advising system often makes sure you're taking prerequisite courses you need for medical school or whichever graduate program you want to move on to, and will make sure you're taking your entrance exams when necessary. There are some really hyper niche advising programs. So for those looking to do maybe dentistry, there are pre-dental programs, pre-med, pre-physical assistant programs. I mean, you name it, lots of institutions want to make sure that you're successful, both in your career search, but also in your search for graduate school placement. Now, for all STEM programs, we are looking for specific courses to make sure that you're prepared for the program to which you're applying. And to talk about that, I'm going to pass things over to Dexter, who's going to go into more detail about the courses you might want to take next.
Thank you very much. Well, we want to make sure that you're prepared for whatever college or university you decide to go to. Many of the colleges and universities that you will apply to look for 4 full years of English, 4 years of math, 3 to 4 years of the lab science classes, 2 or more years of the social sciences. Some schools will want you to have 2 years of foreign languages. And then we have a small number of colleges that require 1 year of visual performing arts for admissions. So it's important for you to make sure that you talk to the admission representatives from these schools to find out exactly what requirements they may have for admission. But if you're looking at going to any of these STEM areas, you want to make sure and take a full contingent of math and science courses. A lot of the colleges at this time are looking for students to have biology, chemistry, and physics as their lab science courses, and these classes will also include a laboratory component. If your school is kind of shy on laboratories, your labs aren't up to par, then you might want to look at a community college or even taking some type of a dual credit class at a local university to give yourself the advantage you need to be admitted to the different schools, and also prepare yourself for the rigor of the curriculum at the various colleges and universities in which you will apply. Math is a very important subject for our students to take in high school. We strongly suggest that you go as far in math as you possibly can. A lot of schools will want you to have calculus to handle the rigor of the academics as far as the STEM programs are concerned. So that becomes something that you would have to talk to your high school advisor about. Once again, if your school is short on offering calculus or any type of pre-calculus courses, that's something that you might want to look at a community college or look at some online school that will offer these programs to help you prepare yourself for the next step in your educational adventure. Finally, as far as the courses that we look for, you will have a variety of different classes that will be offered. Many schools will look for AP, IB courses. International Baccalaureate would be the IB courses, and then we would like to have A's and B's in all the classes that you take. So you would have to definitely check with the schools to make sure if they have a GPA requirement, make sure you're aware of that. But these are the courses that are required. These are the classes that many colleges would deem to be required and non-negotiable in many cases. And we'll be glad to answer any questions you might have about college preparation, the classes you need. I'll turn it over to my next colleague for the very next important session for you.
Yeah, thank you, Dexter. I think you've given me a really good entry point. So as we're thinking about your application, one of the major things we're thinking about is really across all of those different pieces. So part of that is academic, but overall, especially if you're looking to apply to a STEM field, we're wondering what brings you to STEM, or how have you explored your interests? And regardless of if you choose to apply to something in STEM or not, these kind of what brings you to your academic interests, what brings you to applying to our school, what brings you to thinking about college at all, is something we're going to consider as we look at each different part of your application. So as you're putting together your application and you're saying, how will I stand out? How will I show who I am to a school? You can think about it as, What are you doing? So some of that is the coursework that you're taking. Are you pursuing rigor that's available to you in your school? Or are you looking to other resources, be it community colleges near you or online coursework to pursue a rigorous curriculum? And are you seeking out the resources available to you to perform well in that curriculum? We're also thinking about the extracurriculars that you're doing. Are you engaged in your community? If you are pursuing STEM, are there different opportunities that you're taking advantage of within your school or online? I know right now, the opportunities that you have available to you may look very different than what they might have last year or 2 years ago, but are you taking advantage of things that may exist online? Are you part of your school community? So what are you doing there? We're also thinking about what you're saying. So how are your essays displaying your interests? How are they showing us who you are? Especially if there are supplemental questions that involve your interests in science or engineering or math. How are you working through those different ideas? How are you displaying your habits of mind or your ways of thinking that may best suit you to the particular interest that you have? We're also going to consider how others are speaking about you, because at the end of the day, there are multiple voices that we get to engage with in your application. So the letters of recommendation that you have, are you getting those letters of recommendation from a math or a science teacher? Some schools may require you, depending on the school or on the major that you're applying to include a particular letter from a particular subject area. How are people describing your engagement in the classroom or your engagement in the lab? How are they seeing you really blossom as a student or as a community member? And then we'll also consider if you have any awards or outside recognition, other people outside of your immediate school community who have gotten to engage with the work that you do as a scientist or as an engineer or as a young roboticist. Those are some of the things that we may consider. You also may have other awards that you receive or other recognition that you receive from things outside of STEM. But as you're thinking about what will really help you represent yourself best to a school that you're applying to, you want to consider all of these different pieces and how you can really best reflect your successes, your strength as a student from the different parts of your application and to use those well. I definitely want to allow some of my other colleagues to chime in. I know this is one of our favorite parts to talk about the application, but if there isn't anything else or no one else wants to chime in, I will pass it on to Brandon.
Well, that was a good setup, because the one thing I definitely want to say about what you just said, and it feeds into what I'm about to talk about, is you want to take advantage of everything that you have control over. So when it comes to your application, you have control of that. So you want to make sure that you put that time and attention to every single element of the application, because all of it's going to be important in making the ultimate decision. And one of those things that you can help take control of is learning the most about that particular program and that particular institution. So what I'm going to focus on is the ways in which you can learn more about STEM programs as well as that particular college or university. We definitely want to empower you to learn more by reaching out to all of these different resources. You don't have to go through one central point. You can actually reach out directly. So definitely make sure that you take advantage of college websites and social media. We talk about our different projects. We talk about the amazing things that our students and our faculty are doing, and learning about those things is going to be very helpful, because then you can say, I connect to that. And that's the reason why I want to be a part of that particular college or university's community. We definitely encourage you to participate in the virtual information sessions. It's a great way to travel to all of our different institutions without leaving the comforts of your home. So definitely take advantage of that right now. We also encourage you to contact the departments that you're interested in. Going to their websites and looking at the different professors' research profiles will definitely be helpful, because then you can see, is there someone who is studying and focusing on that particular subject at that college or university, and you want to work with them. That could be something that could be helpful in your application when you talk about why Washington University, why Boston, why Columbia, why Rose-Hulman, why Rice. We want to see that you really have looked into our programs and looked really into what we have to offer to make it to assure that that's why you want to go to that particular college or university. But one other great resource is to definitely reach out to student engineering groups. So that could be ones that are identity-based, such as the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, or NSBE, the National Society of Black Engineers. There are a variety of different student engineering organizations, and you can contact them directly to say, What is it like to be an engineering student at that school? How are the ways in which you engage? What are the engineering opportunities like, such as doing internships and studying abroad? So really utilize all these different opportunities and all these different engagements to figure out, why do you want to do engineering or STEM at that particular school? And don't be afraid. We're here to help. So hence, all these resources are available to you. All you got to do is reach out and ask. So with that, I think we're going to open up the floor to questions.
Well, wonderful. And some really great information and some great questions coming in as well. There have been a few questions about sharing information about extracurriculars in the application, and including a question about research. I'm wondering if any of our panelists today have some thoughts on how students can share information if they're involved in research, for example, or other activities in their application, maybe tips, tricks, and/or do they need to send their entire research paper? Do you have thoughts on that? Anyone want to take that one?
I'm happy to start. So first and foremost, you don't have to send all your research. You can completely give us the, citation. You can give us a description of what you've done, and you can put it in the additional information section, or you can include it in a resume. But sending us the full paper is not necessary. So generally what I recommend for students is that if it is something that is important to you, that you want us to know about it, make sure that you include it in the application, or if it's happened since you submitted your application, you can send us an update. It could be an update email. It could be something that you update through a student portal for any of our institutions, but you want to make sure that you send that information, and it's best to send it in a quick and small version rather than in a full research lab paper.
Yes, Emily, were you going to add to that?
Go ahead. I would just add to one tip I have is to really take advantage of the activities section of whichever application you're using. All of us, accept the common application, and many of us also accept the coalition application. So there are activities sections, a wonderful activities section for you to fill out. Now there are a limit on how many activities you can include, but I think things you're incredibly proud of, things you've been able to accomplish, whether it be in school or out of school, or any responsibilities that you've had, I think are a really great place to spend right on that activity section, because it is a required part of the application. And for institutions with incredibly high volumes of application, like SFU, like really all of our institutions, we don't want to focus on the parts that are required. So including your research, including your activities, including whatever honors you have or whatever accomplishments you've been able to accomplish are a great, the activities page is a really wonderful home for that. But of course, you can always email us a resume or any additional information that doesn't quite fit there as well.
So a follow-up question to that I've seen come in that I think is a great just point to elevate of what you've mentioned, Emily, and others can chime in, is what qualifies, quote unquote, as an extracurricular? And I encourage applicants to think broadly, as Emily mentioned. That might be an engagement in your community, it might be religious commitment, it might be paid work, either to supplement family income or your own spending or work experience. There are many different ways that you can be engaged outside the classroom. Another question I saw come in was about whether all of these activities or engagements need to be STEM centric, and the answer is no. They certainly can be if that's something that's part of your life, but the way you spend your time, you should really use your own internal compass of your interests and your needs and commitments to decide how to do that. There have been some questions coming in about letters of recommendation, and I'm curious if any of our panelists want to talk a little bit about suggestions for letters of recommendation for a STEM applicant.
Dexter Jordan from Rose Home, and I'll be more than happy to give some advice about getting recommendations. Make sure that whenever you do ask a teacher, counselor, anyone at your school for a recommendation, that they know who you are and that they like you. It sounds like a very small thing, but it's pretty important. And then make sure that they are able to write a letter that shows you in a very good light, even showing times that you've struggled with something and had to overcome those obstacles, or times that you've done exceptionally well, have helped other students. We look for examples that help you stand out from the dearth of the applications that we're going to receive. So any type of insight into who you are as a person really will help us to make admission decisions.
I'll just add, I know that there are also some questions about when that teacher might be writing that letter for you, especially if there has been less contact with teachers in person, given the past few months and past year. When we're looking at letters of recommendation, we do want to understand who you are in the classroom. And if a teacher who best understands you is a teacher that got to see you in the classroom earlier on in your time, that's all right. We want to understand how you may question and how you grow. And if that teacher can also provide any perspective on how you've grown, even if it has been outside of their classroom, that is incredibly helpful as well. And then just making sure that as you're looking at the programs and schools that you're applying to, that you're asking teachers who best fit what the school is looking for. So if that is a math or a science teacher, if it is teachers who taught you in an academic subject, making sure that the goal that we have in reading your letters is met based on what we're asking for there.
And I do have to add one final thing as far as recommendations are concerned for our homeschoolers. If you are a student and you are being homeschooled, please make sure you get a recommendation from someone that is not your parent. We'd like to hear from an instructor at a university or a high school, someone that's worked with you outside of your family, that will give us more insight on who you are.
Great. Well, there's some questions coming in about awards and competitions, and I'm wondering if anyone wants to talk a little bit about first where you might share this information in the application, but also what role these play in the evaluation process, and anything you'd want an applicant to know.
I can chime in about that. So there is actually, again with the Common App, the Coalition application, there are specific sections that ask you if there are any honors or awards that you'd like to share. And those could be anything from you placed at a first robotics competition, or you're in a science Olympiad program. These are not required by any means. I'm just giving some examples. Or you won an award that's specific to your school. These are all questions that we ask on the application itself. You can include them right there. I think it's really important to know, I see a lot of questions coming in about what extracurricular activities we want to see, what the rate is for specific activities. And I think it's really important to know that we don't necessarily have specific extracurricular activities that we're looking for. Now, we did talk about specifics for coursework, and that's because we really want to make sure you're set up for success in our curriculum. But because there are so many different types of programs, so many different types of ways you can spend your time outside the classroom, and such various types of access to those programs, there's no specific type of extracurricular we're looking for. What extracurriculars do for us is it allows us to understand what you're responsible for, how you manage your time, what you're interested in, if you have the luxury of time to pursue things that you're excited about and interested in, what maybe obstacles you've had to overcome, and any accomplishments you're particularly proud of. But I think it's important to know that there's no set agenda when we look at your activities section. We're just looking to learn more about you, how you spend your time, and how you manage your responsibilities. So honors are wonderful and tell us about, areas where you may have risen to the top, but that's by no means required. It's just something that can help us understand you in context a little bit better. So I think that's really important to know. Whatever you're doing outside the classroom, whether it be teaching yourself how to play the guitar, whether it be writing code, whether it be caring for your younger siblings, all of this is valued and valid and important to share with us in the application process. So I just want to make that plug that there are lots of places to brag about your accomplishments, but know that we're not looking for any one accomplishment outside the classroom that is required necessarily for admission.
Thanks, Emily. And you mentioned something that I want to elevate and also invite my colleagues to chime in on, and that was context. And I've seen some questions come in about course availability and course selection and different curricular types. And just to reiterate some of the conversation from earlier, we know that different students have different options at their high school, and your high school may offer a wide array of courses, or you may have limited choices. So where you have the ability to pursue different kinds of coursework, we're looking and hoping that you'll take advantage of that. But we also know that that's not an option for all students. And so we are tasked with getting to know you through your application and understanding what options and opportunities are available to you. And that's the context or the frame through which we are evaluating that application. So anything else anyone wants to add about context or academics? Yeah, Brandon.
Yeah, I definitely want to stress the fact that we look at you within the context of where you're coming from. We don't compare schools in this process. We don't say that because the school has an IB program, it is better than a school that has a dual enrollment program. If you only have access to honors, that's what you have access to. And the same thing goes when it comes to extracurriculars. We know that extracurriculars are not universally offered. We just want to see, what did you take advantage of with respect to what you had access to. And also, I know a lot of students are concerned about if one thing is better than the other. That's not the way that this process works. The way that this process works is that we really look to see, what have you done within the context of the space that you're in and within the context of what your interests are. So as long as you're doing what you truly want to do, you're doing this process correctly. I often have to stress to students, don't do something because you think it looks good on your college application, because guess what? It's not going to look good on your college application if you're just doing it for the sake of doing it. I'm pretty sure all of my colleagues have gotten this question, how many community service hours should I do? Usually when a student asks me that, my response to them is, do you like doing community service? If they say no, then I'm like, then don't do it. Because the point of doing community service is to do it in service of the community and because you want to be of service. Same thing when it comes to being a STEM applicant. You're engaging in internships because you're interested in learning more about that particular subject. You're engaging in this activity because you genuinely want to learn more about that activity, or you just want to do that activity. So really, when it comes to this approach, we're not saying one thing is better than the other. What we're looking to see is, what are you doing? What do you have access to do? And exactly how is that living and breathing in the experience that you're going to bring to our college and university? Because we're creating a symphony. We need all sorts of different instruments. So that means we're going to need that unique sound of a bassoonist versus that unique sound of a French horn player. And each and every one of you is going to bring something unique to the table. So relax. You're doing the right thing by just exploring.
Just to also chime in terms of providing context and ways to utilize your application to best do that. I think Emily made a really great point about the additional information portion of your application, especially in the past year and looking forward to a more uncertain school year. Another portion of the application that is helpful for you to advocate for yourself, especially in the context of COVID-19, is also the community disruption portion that exists on both the common application or the coalition application, or if you have the other opportunity to provide context as it relates to COVID in particular, but also more generally how you're living your life these days. Some of that can be included by a counselor. They may be able to provide information about coursework that has changed, or the structure of your classroom day in parts of their school report that they'll fill out for you. But if there are particular expectations that you've had on your time in light of COVID-19, or if particular opportunities have shifted for you, you might want to consider using that portion of the application to best ground us in the context of your day-to-day and of your high school experience.
Absolutely. And a great question that has just come in, I want to pivot to a little bit. It's a little different than about the application process per se, but I think it's an important topic, is students who are still figuring out what kind of career they want or area of interest they might have. How might they do that both in high school perhaps, but also when they're a student in college? And what kinds of resources or opportunities might exist to explore, particularly in STEM fields? How does that work, or any thoughts or suggestions folks might have?
Yeah. Oh, I know Brandon wants to chime in too, so I will keep my remarks very brief, but I imagine we might say similar things. Many of our institutions are more than just STEM institutions. And so there is ample opportunity to explore, especially if you're at a university or college that also offers a liberal arts curriculum. And by liberal arts, we mean really kind of a diverse offerings for academics. So things in the humanities, social sciences, natural sciences, pre-professions, you name it. And in terms of high school, we know that you change your mind all the time, and that's totally fine. We want you to be able to change your mind. We want you to be able to explore, especially as a young person when you're still figuring things out. So being unsure in high school is completely okay. Also, if you get to college and you're unsure, you can talk to the support systems that are built into our institutions, like your academic advisor, like your professors, about changing your mind. We don't want you to feel stuck. We want you to feel like you have agency and opportunity to pursue your various interests. So that means maybe changing your major, maybe even switching in between schools within a college, or it could mean adding on a minor. It could mean just exploring by taking classes outside of your specific major. I think that's the beauty of college. It's the whole point of college is exploration. Yes, to gain expertise, but also to discover the things you're really excited about, to grow as a person, as a thinker, and to expose yourself to different ideas and schools of thought. So please, please, please forgive yourself if you change your mind, because we all do all the time. It's totally normal and completely human.
Yeah, absolutely echo everything that Emily just said. The only thing that I would add is as you're looking at colleges and universities, that is something that you definitely want to take advantage of and ask those questions about what would it be like in terms of being able to transfer, and also when you apply, how does that manifest itself in the application process? Because for some schools, you are applying into that specific school, and if admitted, you're going to be in that particular school. So you want to ask that question of, if I'm applying, am I applying specifically into the College of Engineering and into that particular major? Because then that could mean that you don't have as much flexibility after you become a student. And then other institutions are a lot more flexible, where literally your admission letter is going to say, welcome to that university. And therefore you then have the ability to be able to explore all sorts of different majors, and then ultimately make a decision in maybe your second and third, year. But once again, talk about those resources and how you're able to do that exploration, because that'll definitely help when you're doing your college search process.
I think that's a great point. Different institutions operate in different ways. And so this sort of gets to a question, I think, also in the chat or in the Q&A. A good research option for folks to do is to, when you're building your college list, is to find out, do you apply to a major? Do you apply to a college? Do you apply to a school? What are the options to transfer or change that? How and what's the timeline there? Because it's going to vary at every institution, just as mentioned. So definitely add that to your list as you're exploring building your college list, as one of the criteria you might be considering, if that's something of interest or something that you're considering or thinking about. There have been a few questions about summer programs, and I'm going to take a step back and just also talk about with COVID-19, different impacts students have experienced and had. I'm wondering if any of my colleagues are interested in talking a bit about summer programs and or impact of COVID-19.
Yeah. Oh, no, Amy, go ahead.
Oh, please jump in whenever. I guess I will take some summer programs in the context of COVID-19, how those might have changed or what's available. Thinking a little bit about summer programs that have maybe hinged on being able to show you a little bit more about a college campus by inviting you to that campus, by spending time on that campus. A lot of those have shifted to be online and may function a little bit differently. Some of those programs may be run through individual offices at colleges or universities. Some of those may be run with the support of an admissions office, or even like Brandon mentioned earlier, some of those student engineering outreach groups. But those can really take different shape. And some of those may include academic components where you may be involved in some type of coursework. They may connect you to a faculty member in terms of conducting some type of research, be it excuse me, be it online or otherwise, and then thinking a little bit more about how you actually get access to those programs. There are programs that are free that require an application. Some programs, those are definitely not programs we expect you to necessarily do, that may have a cost associated with them. But especially now that things are online and that a lot of students are participating in more programs virtually, considering what is available for free online, and also thinking about how you may be spending your summer in terms of taking online courses that may be available for free through a number of different institutions is another great thing to think about as you're making sure that you're getting access to coursework, to rigor, and also just getting to expand what you're doing over the summer as you're connecting with ideas.
I know time is kind of running short, so I just want to briefly talk about the impact of COVID-19 on lots of things. I would say there's probably 4 major areas that have come up in our application review that COVID-19 has impacted. The first, of course, is the disruption to your education. So we understand that maybe your coursework was pass-fail in the spring semester of 2020. Or you've been doing hybrid schooling for this past year, or you're completely remote, or you're in person, and that causes some stress. So we understand that there's been a variety of types of academic experiences that have been impacted. We also know and have talked about the fact that extracurricular activities have been severely limited. Summer programs are remote. The list goes on for ways in which you may have been restrained from participating in the things that you want to. And that's not awesome, but we do understand that. We'll take that into consideration when we look at your application. The third thing is testing. Of course, standardized test scores. Many dates have been canceled. It is maybe you don't feel comfortable taking tests in a room with other people. That's totally fine. Thousands of institutions across the country have suspended or removed or have already been test optional or don't require test scores for admission. And then finally, there has been tremendous impact to all of us personally. We know that there are so many things you and your family or loved ones may have experienced, whether it be tragic, challenging, or wonderful. Maybe you've discovered something new. So that personal element is also something we might see come out in your application. And know that we are experiencing this as well. We're all in this together, even though we're all separated, which is for the best. But know that when we look at your application, we're going to take all of this into consideration. That goes back to context, not just the context of your high school, but also the context of your personal life experiences and the context of the constraints that you've experienced this past little over a year. So I just wanted to kind of outline that really quickly as we head towards the finish line of this event.
Well, thank you, Emily. And we have about 2 minutes left, so I appreciate that. And also just to acknowledge that there were several questions in the chat about testing particularly, and I would encourage you to take the admissions staff at their word. You can find out admissions policies on different institution websites. And if a school says they're test optional, they are truly test optional. And please know that you could always reach out to offices as well, admissions offices, if you have questions about what that means at that institution or need further guidance or advice. We're down to about 1.5 minutes left, so I'm going to shift gears just really quickly. I'm going to remind all of you, our wonderful attendees, about some upcoming information sessions. I know you are probably incredibly excited now to hear more about each of our institutions, starting in just a few minutes with Boston University, but all of our different universities will be presenting more information about our schools in the coming week. So please be sure to register and take advantage of this great series of programs with StriveScan. I'll also give about 20 seconds to each of my colleagues for any last words, anything they want to share with our attendees today, words of wisdom or a passing goodbye comment. And I'm going to put Brandon on the spot first. Brandon, what would you share with our attendees?
The only way you'll ever know if any college or university is an option is you got to apply. So put forth that best application, dream big, and go for it.
All right, Emily, I'm going to put you in the hot seat next. How about you?
I would encourage you to be wildly open-minded. I know that a lot of us here are pretty well-known institutions, but even if you've never heard of a school before, if it excites you, that's wonderful. So don't let names fool you. Keep an open mind, explore, and try to really make this process about you and finding the right fit for you.
Great advice. Dexter, any words of wisdom?
Yeah, I think I'm going to take one of Brandon's words of wisdom and tell them to enjoy the ride. This is a wonderful time of your life. So enjoy this process, have fun with it, and just explore the different opportunities that are open to you.
Good advice for sure. And Naomi?
Almost last, so many good things. I'll just say where you end up in this process is not who you are, and that you will have an enriching experience. You'll grow so much regardless of the school that you end up going to, but you'll find a good place to grow.
Absolutely. I'll echo all of my colleagues. They said it better than I, but I would just add that everything is going to work out. It's all going to work out in the end. And I know we're out of time, so I'm going to turn things back over to our facilitator, Kelsey.
Thank you so much, Emily. And thank you everyone for joining us, whether it's the evening or afternoon where you are, we appreciate you being here. When you close out of this window, there'll be a link to a very quick 4-question survey. We'd appreciate any feedback you can provide. Also, as Emily mentioned, there are multiple sessions still being hosted this evening, as well as over the next 2 days. So please be sure to sign up for additional sessions. In about a week, you'll be able to find this session's recording, as well as all the other sessions recordings at strivescan.com/CACHET. Thank you all so much for joining, and thank you to our panelists for the great information. I hope everyone has a wonderful evening.